Hello and welcome to This Week on Planet Earth. I'm your co-host Jacob.
And I'm your co-host Matty, where each week we break down the latest space exploration, science and technology news.
So without further ado, let's get into this week's stories. So I'm going to kick this week's episode off with some good old-fashioned alien life form news, because it's me and I love talking about this stuff. And I actually think we originally covered this story on the second episode of the Infinite Void podcast that came out, but yeah, it's a little bit on from the whole discovery of, they thought that there might be life in the clouds of Venus from the phosphine discovery. And this basically goes on to say that Venus could be becoming more habitable after evidence of bacteria life forms were found in its clouds. Scientists have said researchers from Cardiff University, MIT, and Cambridge have suggested the planet, which is 47.34 million kilometers away from Earth, could have the colorless gas made up of nitrogen and hydrogen that is also known as ammonia in its clouds. The scientists have modeled a set of chemical processes to show how a cascade of chemical reactions would neutralize surrounding droplets of sulfuric acid if there were any traces of ammonia. This would then result in the acidity of the clouds dropping from -11 to 0. And although it is still very acidic on the pH scale, it would be at a level that life could potentially survive at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool.
Yeah, I was just reading that then. I was just like, so 7 is neutral on the pH scale. So 0 is like a very, very strong acid. And -11, I didn't even know went into minus scales. So. But yeah, it's quite interesting. Sort of follow on piece from obviously that big discovery that we had last year. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see where they go, because I'd like to know more what happened with Venus, because obviously it's so hot. Everything on there is pretty much like devastated or kind of been weathered away by its crazy winds and everything. So it'd be interesting to see what's happened with it.
Yeah. So my first piece is, it's basically a running fixture now of Trope News. Is every week I'll take you on James Webb, so it's being pushed back again, only by one day this time due to weather. So James Webb is supposedly going to launch on Christmas Day now. I think it's going to be around 7 o'clock if you're in America, around midday in the UK and Europe. So yeah, Christmas Day we might finally get James Webb launched, but I wouldn't hold your breath.
Yeah, I really want it to happen. It'd be really cool to have a Christmas Day launch as well. I feel sorry for everybody that misses out on their Christmas meal because they have to do the launch, but it would be cool. But I don't know. I'm not saying anything until it happens, because I don't know, it could be pushed back to Boxing Day and so forth.
But yeah, especially when it's been so long, I don't imagine they'll mind waiting a couple of days just to get a good weather slot. So but yeah, we'll see. Wow, when this goes out, it could be tomorrow, but obviously by the time this goes out, it could have changed again. So who knows?
Yeah, we'll have to keep our fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
So my second story, kind of keeping within the theme for me anyway, is good old-fashioned fossil story. And today is that a 72 million year old dinosaur embryo was discovered inside a fossilized egg. And
very Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I'm sure I will have this in the thumbnail somewhere, so you can see that from when you clicked on it. But it's basically a really well preserved embryo that was found inside a dinosaur egg, and it's believed to be between 66 and 72 million years old. And it was found in southern China. But what looks really interesting about it is it's kind of shedding a new light on its link between like the behavior of modern birds and dinosaurs, and it looks very much like a modern bird.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool.
Yeah, they do keep finding sort of new archaeological discoveries that not archaeology, paleontology, that sort of link dinosaurs and birds. That I think quite recently they found like quite good evidence of like feathers and stuff. So I think we're very quickly coming to the conclusion that dinosaurs are probably more like birds than we think they were. So,
yeah, maybe not like lizards, and more like birds.
Mm-hmm. That neat name. That's the
It's cool though. It's very interesting because
mhm,
I just love like I'm super interested at the moment in looking back and
mhm.
seeing how far we can look back, especially with all this like cool new stuff. I'm listening to a book with Brian Greene where he's talking about the potential for gravitational telescopes, but
Mhm.
we can talk about that in a future time before I ramble on. But
It's
it's
a
very
different
cool.
episode.
Yeah.
My second piece is a tech piece, and this is about the continued rise of TikTok. Do you use TikTok at all? Into it?
I don't use it as much as my girlfriend uses it.
Hmm.
My girlfriend is on it all the time.
I find it ridiculously addictive. It's pretty. I think I said before how like compared to other social media, every single thing on my For You page just seems to be like perfectly tailored to me. And that sort of supports this piece, which says that TikTok has dethroned Google as the year's most popular domain. So I think as early as last sort of Christmas, TikTok had already overtaken YouTube in terms of watch time. When in the last couple of months, the piece says that TikTok has overtaken Google in terms of sort of like hits on the domain, so people searching for stuff effectively. So at the beginning of last year, beginning of 2021, Google was comfortably at the top with TikTok ranking number 7. But over the last couple of months, so October, November, TikTok was outperforming Google on most days, knocking Google into second place. So pretty crazy. As I said, it's sort of weird because I not grew up with, but I remember sort of Vine being a massive thing. And then Vine sort of died. And I sort of, looking back on it, I can't believe that YouTube or Facebook or Instagram sort of jumped on that like short video format
Yeah.
sort of social media. Like, no, like Vine happened, everyone loved it, it went away, and no one sort of tried to do it until obviously TikTok came along. It's slightly different, but that sort of short video thing. And now you obviously have YouTube Shorts and Facebook are trying to sort of get it on it as well, and Instagram. So um, it is a very weird social media, I think, in terms of how it has developed so quickly. Um, and it's now overtaking Google.
That's crazy. That's absolutely
Yeah.
crazy.
It is ridiculous that an app which basically just shows you stupid videos that are like 5 seconds long is overtaking like the world's biggest search engine.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Mhm.
It's only going to get bigger as well.
Yeah,
It's crazy how they've turned it around as well. Because I remember when TikTok was first out, it was just loads of people like doing weird duet videos.
yeah.
It was like no one was really interested in it. And then out of nowhere this year, it's just blown up. Well,
Mhm.
this year and last year.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
lockdown. Sort of April of last year, I got into it. Oh, that was me hooked.
So for my final story today, it is a bit of a weird one. I wouldn't have expected this to have come from the University of Cambridge, but here we are. It's 2021. So last kind of couple of days to throw in a crazy story. And this one is Millipedes as big as cars once roamed northern England, fossil finds reveals. And it basically goes on to say that the largest ever fossil of a giant millipede as big as a car has been found on a beach in the north of England. The fossil that remains of a creature, I'm not even going to try and say what that is called,
No, neither am
dates
I.
back to about 326 million years ago, over 100 million years before the age of dinosaurs. The fossil reveals that it was the largest known invertebrate animal of all time, larger than the ancient sea scorpion that was previously the record holder.
Mhm.
And that's just crazy because millipedes, right? They already freak me out. They're not something that I like being near. And one as big as a car is terrifying.
Yeah, it is very weird. So I'm looking at the picture now, and it says like the width of it is 50 centimeters, which is pretty mad.
That's so fat. It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of like imagining like the world's biggest snake,
Hmm.
but with but twice as fat.
Yeah. and loads of legs.
It's like something out of like a horror film, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's nuts.
Yeah.
How does something like that complex get that big?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of things were bigger back then because of the climate, weren't they? Because it was a lot warmer and I think the CO2 was a lot higher. Sort of plants were able to grow a lot faster and bigger, which meant that insects were able to grow a lot faster and bigger. So I think that's why. But
so technically, we're moving back towards that with
yeah,
climate change. So it's not going to be the climate that ultimately destroys us. It's going to be millipedes as big as cards that come back.
Amazing. Oh dear. But my last piece of news is a science piece. So this is news that Finland's fifth and latest nuclear reactor, I will try to pronounce this, Olkiluoto 3, has reached criticality. So this is sort of the ramp up of the nuclear reactor before it goes online. So this is the point where it's able to sustain itself for its own nuclear fission. So the reason why this is big news is this is the first nuclear unit commissioned in Finland for over 40 years. And when this was sort of announced, approved back in 2002, it was the first nuclear project in Western Europe for more than a decade. So it's, you don't get a lot of nuclear power plants being built, and particularly now with obviously Germany announcing that they're going to close down all theirs, and I think France are reviewing theirs as well after the Fukushima disaster in Japan. A lot of countries have sort of taken a step back from nuclear, so it's interesting that Finland has sort of pursued with this, and it says that over the 40-year lifespan of the new units, it will eventually produce around 14% of the country's electricity. So quite a significant amount.
Yeah.
And the second reason why this is interesting is the design of the reactor. It is a EPR, which stands for European Pressure Reactor, I think. It's quite a new design. So the first ones were built in China, in Taishan. They entered operation in only 2018. There's a couple planned for the UK and France as well. So the two units going in at Hinkley Point C are meant to be EPRs if they ever get built. So yeah, quite a big sort of bit of news in the nuclear industry and for Finland.
Mad.
Yeah, I always love this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, nuclear, I think, it's even though it's been around for 60, 70 years now as a sort of power generating tool, I still think these things are some of the most amazing machines on the planet.
Yeah. Well, it's just it's a crazy the whole concept even around like nuclear energy and stuff is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's nuts that we actually managed to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Well, yeah, that pretty much wraps up all of the stories for this week's episode of This Week on Planet Earth. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Infinite Void Pod. And if you want to just stay up to date with This Week on Planet Earth, you can follow Twope News on Instagram. And yeah, guys, we will catch you next episode for some more interesting stories.